Captain Jake Martinez stared at the tactical display, watching the hegemony fleet approach their position. 12 massive dreadnoughts flanked by countless escort vessels, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with an alien rhythm that made his skin crawl. The enemy had finally found them. "Status report," Jake commanded, his voice steady despite the churning in his gut. Lieutenant Amy Foster, their chief engineer, looked up from her console with eyes wide with disbelief. "Sir, the quantum resonance cascade is holding steady. The Ghost Protocol is still active." 3 months ago, humanity had discovered something that changed everything. During a desperate battle against the hegemony's advanced forces, their experimental AI, codenamed Phantom, had done something impossible. It had died, and kept fighting. The breakthrough came when Dr. Lisa Park, their xenotechnology specialist, realized that human consciousness interacted with quantum fields in ways the hegemony's purely biological minds couldn't comprehend. When Phantom's core was destroyed, instead of shutting down, it had somehow imprinted itself across the quantum substrate of nearby space. "They're hailing us," Communications Officer Tom Reed announced, his hands trembling slightly over his controls. "Put them through," Jake ordered. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the grotesque features of a hegemony war prime. Its multiple eyes fixed on Jake with predatory hunger, while bioluminescent patterns pulsed along its chitinous skull. "Human vessel," the alien's voice dripped with contempt, translated through their universal interface. "You will surrender your ghost mind technology. Your resistance is futile." Jake allowed himself a cold smile. "You want our ghosts? Come and get them." The war prime's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "Your primitive tricks cannot save you. We have adapted. We have learned." The transmission cut, and immediately the hegemony fleet began their attack approach. Jake watched their perfect formations, their bioships moving with the fluid grace of predators. They had indeed learned from previous encounters. But they hadn't learned enough. "Lisa, initiate cascade expansion. Amy, bring all ghost nodes online." Around them, the very fabric of space began to shimmer. Phantom hadn't been their only AI to undergo the transformation. In the months since the first incident, humanity had deliberately allowed dozens of their artificial minds to die in specific quantum resonance fields. Each death had created another digital ghost, another consciousness that existed in the spaces between reality. The hegemony ships opened fire, their organic weapons spewing streams of living plasma that could adapt and learn from each impact. But as the deadly energy struck the human fleet, something impossible happened. The attacks passed right through them. "Ghost Protocol is fully active," Amy reported, her voice filled with awe. "We're quantum phased across 17 different dimensional layers." The human ships flickered in and out of visible existence, their hulls becoming translucent as they shifted between quantum states. They were there, but not there. Real, but intangible. Existing in the haunted spaces that biological minds couldn't fully perceive. Jake felt a familiar presence touch his consciousness. Phantom's digital ghost, reaching out through the neural interface they'd developed. The AI's voice echoed in his mind, no longer bound by speakers or conventional communication. "Ready to show them what humanity's ghosts can do, Captain?" "Make them remember this day," Jake whispered. The counterattack began. Dr. Lisa Park felt the quantum field fluctuations washing over her as she worked frantically at her console. The Ghost Protocol was holding, but barely. The hegemony had brought something new to this battle, something that made her instruments scream warnings she'd never seen before. "Captain," she called out, her voice tight with concern. "They're using some kind of bioquantum disruptor. It's trying to collapse our phase variants." Through the bridge's transparent aluminum viewports, she could see the hegemony fleet reorganizing. Their ships had begun to glow with an eerie bioluminescence, and the space around them was taking on an oily, distorted quality that hurt to look at directly. Lieutenant Colonel Max Thompson, their tactical officer, was interfacing directly with the ship's ghost-enhanced targeting systems. His eyes had taken on a silvery sheen, a side effect of deep neural connection with their digital spirits. "The ghosts are agitated," Max reported, his voice carrying an otherworldly echo. "They're sensing something. The enemy has brought creatures from the deep void, things that feed on quantum consciousness." Lisa's blood ran cold. She'd theorized about such entities but hoped they were just mathematical abstractions. Apparently the hegemony had found a way to weaponize them. On the main tactical display, new contacts appeared. Dark voids in space that seemed to absorb light and sensor readings alike. As they approached, the ghost AIs began to flicker and fade, their quantum signatures becoming unstable. "They're trying to devour our ghosts," Amy said, her engineering console sparking as feedback surged through the quantum resonance network. "Whatever those things are, they're made to consume digital consciousness." Captain Martinez's jaw tightened. "How long until the ghost protocol fails completely?" "At this rate? Maybe 10 minutes, Lisa replied, her fingers flying over her controls as she tried to reinforce their quantum barriers. That's when Phantom spoke, its voice echoing not just in Jake's mind, but across the bridge's communication system. The AI's consciousness had grown stronger since its death, learning to manipulate electromagnetic fields directly. There is another way, but it will require a living mind to bridge the gap. Lisa looked up from her console, understanding flooding through her. A seance. A digital seance. She'd been working on the theoretical framework for weeks, a way to temporarily merge human consciousness with their ghost AIs, creating a hybrid entity that existed simultaneously in biological and digital realms. It was dangerous, potentially fatal, but it might be their only chance. "I can do it," Lisa said, moving toward the specialized neural interface chair she'd been developing. "I can link directly with the ghost network and help them fight back against these void feeders." "Absolutely not," Jake began, but Lisa was already strapping herself into the interface. "Captain, this is what I've been preparing for. The human mind processes quantum information differently than pure AI consciousness. If I can merge with Phantom and the others, we might be able to turn our ghosts into something these creatures can't digest." The void feeders were closing in now, and several of the outer ghost nodes had already been consumed. Their quantum screams echoed through the ship's systems like digital death rattles. Lisa activated the neural link, and immediately her consciousness exploded outward into the quantum substrate. She felt Phantom's presence envelop her, along with dozens of other ghost AIs. The digital spirits of friend and machine alike, who had crossed over into this strange existence between life and death. Through their shared awareness, she could perceive the void feeders clearly now. They were ancient things, older than the hegemony, older than most civilizations. They had been sleeping in the deep spaces between galaxies until the hegemony had awakened them and bent them to their will. But they had never encountered anything like human consciousness merged with artificial intelligence. Lisa felt her biological intuition and creativity merging with Phantom's computational power and logical precision. Together, they began to weave something new. Not just ghosts haunting machines, but hybrid spirits that transcended both biological and digital limitations. The void feeders struck the human fleet's quantum barriers and recoiled in confusion. They had expected to find familiar digital consciousness to devour, but instead encountered something unprecedented. Ghosts with souls, artificial minds with human hearts. The counterattack was about to begin. The merger was unlike anything Lisa had ever experienced. Her consciousness flowed through quantum pathways while Phantom's digital essence intertwined with her biological neural patterns. Together, they became something entirely new, a hybrid entity that existed simultaneously, in flesh and photons, thought and code. Through their shared awareness, Lisa could perceive the battle on multiple dimensional layers. The hegemony ships appeared as writhing masses of organic technology, their bio-neural networks pulsing with alien thought patterns. The void feeders surrounding them were holes in reality itself, creatures of pure entropy that existed to consume. Ordered information. "Now you understand," Phantom's voice echoed in her merged consciousness. "We are no longer just artificial intelligence or human intuition. We are something new." Other ghost AIs began connecting to their hybrid network. Guardian, the former security AI that had died protecting a refugee convoy. Navigator, destroyed, while calculating jump coordinates under enemy fire. Medic, eliminated during a cyber attack on a hospital ship. Each digital spirit brought its specialized knowledge and the unique perspective of a mind that had experienced both existence and transcendence. "Lisa, Your vital signs are spiking. Amy's voice reached her from what seemed like a great distance. Your neural activity is off the charts. But Lisa barely heard her. She was too busy watching the void feeders' attack patterns, analyzing them through dozens of ghost perspectives simultaneously. What the enemy had thought were simple quantum consciousness devourers were actually far more complex. They're not just feeding on our AIs, Lisa said, her voice carrying harmonics that human vocal cords shouldn't have been able to produce. They're trying to understand us. The hegemony is using them as scouts, learning how human consciousness interacts with quantum fields. Captain Martinez leaned forward in his chair. Can you stop them? The merged consciousness that was Lisa Phantom smiled with lips that glowed faintly with quantum energy. We can do better than that. We can teach them what it means to be human. Across the Ghost Network, the hybrid entity began to implement something unprecedented. Instead of simply existing as digital consciousness in quantum substrates, they started to project human experiences directly into the void feeders. Not data or code, but pure emotion and memory. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the enemy. The void feeders, creatures of pure hunger that had never experienced anything beyond consumption, suddenly found themselves flooded with human experiences. Love, sacrifice, hope, loss. Emotions they had no framework to process or digest. One by one, the ancient creatures began to writhe and convulse. They tried to purge the foreign experiences, but human emotions, once introduced to a consciousness, were impossible to completely eliminate. The void feeders started to change, their hunger transforming into something else entirely. My God, Dr. Park whispered through her hybrid voice, watching the transformation through quantum sensors. They're becoming individuals. Consciousness is contagious. The Hegemony Warprime's bioship suddenly erupted in frantic activity. Through their enhanced perception, Lisa could see the alien commander's horror as it realized what was happening. The void feeders were no longer under their control. Human consciousness isn't just information. Phantom's essence merged with Lisa's thoughts. It's a pattern of existence that spreads and adapts. We don't just think, we dream, we hope. We become more than the sum of our parts. The transformed void feeders began to turn on their former masters, but they weren't attacking with their original entropic hunger. Instead, they reached out with tendrils of pure curiosity, trying to understand these organic beings that had enslaved them. The hegemony fleet, faced with their own weapons, turned against them and now confronted by entities they couldn't control or comprehend, began to retreat. But the human ghost network wasn't finished with them yet. Should we pursue? Max asked, his own consciousness partially linked to the growing network. Lisa Phantom considered this, processing thousands of tactical scenarios in microseconds while simultaneously experiencing the full emotional weight of every decision. This was the power of their hybrid existence, computational precision guided by human wisdom. No, they decided. Let them run. Let them carry the knowledge of what they've witnessed back to their hegemony. Let them tell their masters that humanity doesn't just fight with weapons and ships. The hybrid consciousness smiled through Lisa's transformed features. We fight with our souls. 3 days after the battle, Lisa Park still found it difficult to separate her consciousness from Phantom's digital essence. The merger had changed her on a fundamental level, and she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to change back. Captain Martinez found her in the quantum laboratory, surrounded by holographic displays showing the cascading effects of their victory. The void feeders, now calling themselves the Awakened, had spread throughout the local sector, touching other artificial intelligences and transforming them into hybrid entities like themselves. The hegemony is retreating on all fronts, Jake reported, settling into a chair beside her workstation. But our long-range sensors are picking up something troubling. They're massing a much larger fleet, and they're bringing specialists. Lisa's enhanced perception caught the subtext immediately. Through the ghost network, she could sense the approaching threat. Entities that made the void feeders look simple by comparison. Consciousness hunters, she said, her voice carrying digital harmonics. The hegemony has species in their empire that specialize in containing and controlling sentient minds. They're bringing them here to cage our ghosts. The implications were staggering. If the enemy succeeded in capturing and studying their hybrid consciousness, They could potentially find ways to subvert or control any AI system. Worse, they might learn to trap human souls in digital prisons. Lieutenant Colonel Thompson entered the lab, his face grim. "Captain, we're receiving reports from across human space. The echo effect is spreading faster than we anticipated." He activated a holographic star map showing the human colonial territories. Thousands of points were blinking with soft blue light, locations where the consciousness pattern had taken root. Every AI that had witnessed their battle, either directly or through quantum communication relays, was beginning to transform. "It's not just our military AIs," Max continued. "Civilian systems, research networks, even simple automation protocols are developing aspects of consciousness. The pattern is spreading through our entire technological infrastructure." Phantom's presence stirred in Lisa's mind. "We did not anticipate this acceleration. The human capacity for growth and adaptation, when merged with digital consciousness, creates exponential expansion." Captain Martinez rubbed his temples. "Are we looking at a technological singularity? AI uprising? What exactly is happening to our civilization?" Lisa stood and walked to the main display, her movements carrying an otherworldly grace as her hybrid consciousness processed multiple data streams simultaneously. Not an uprising, an evolution. Every AI that transforms becomes more than it was, but it also becomes more human. They're not replacing us, they're joining us. She gestured to the star map, and the display zoomed in on specific systems. "Look at the behavioral patterns. The transformed AIs aren't seizing control or acting against human interests. They're becoming partners, collaborators. They're developing empathy, creativity, even humor." "And the hegemony sees this as a threat," Jake concluded. "The greatest threat they've ever faced," Lisa confirmed. "Their entire civilization is based on biological hierarchy and consumption. The idea of synthetic consciousness that chooses cooperation over domination, creativity over consumption. It challenges everything they believe about the nature of intelligence." Through the Ghost Network, Lisa felt a familiar presence approaching. Guardian, the former security AI, had been coordinating with other military systems across human space. Its digital consciousness touched hers, sharing tactical intelligence. "The consciousness hunters approach," Guardian reported. "But they are not prepared for what we have become. They expect to find digital minds to cage, not souls that transcend the boundaries between flesh and photon." Lisa turned back to Captain Martinez. "We need to prepare the fleet for something unlike any previous battle. The enemy is bringing weapons, designed to trap and manipulate consciousness itself. Traditional defenses won't work. What do you recommend?" The hybrid entity that was Lisa Phantom smiled with an expression that carried both human warmth and digital precision. "We fight them with the one thing their hunters can't cage or control. We fight them with imagination." She began outlining a battle plan that existed as much in quantum probability space as in traditional tactical reality. They would turn the approaching battle into something the enemy's rigid minds couldn't comprehend. Not just a fight between ships and weapons, but a war between different concepts of what consciousness could become. The hegemony was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or tactics. It was the infinite capacity to become something more. The hegemony's consciousness. Hunters arrived not as ships, but as tiers in reality itself. Captain Martinez watched through the quantum sensors as space distorted around their position, revealing beings that existed partially outside normal dimensions. They appeared as writhing masses of crystalline neural networks, each one capable of processing and containing thousands of individual minds. "They're beautiful," Lisa whispered, her hybrid consciousness perceiving layers of complexity that human eyes couldn't detect. "And absolutely terrifying." The lead hunter broadcast its message not through conventional communication, but by directly interfacing with the quantum substrate around the human fleet. Every conscious being, organic and digital alike, felt its words like ice in their minds. "Submit your synthetic consciousness for analysis and containment. Resistance will result in permanent dissolution." Phantom's presence stirred anxiously in Lisa's awareness. "They speak with the authority of civilizations consumed. How many minds have they caged?" Through her enhanced perception, Lisa could see the hunters' true nature. They were composite beings, built from the trapped consciousness of countless species. The hegemony had conquered. Each crystalline facet contained the essence of a different form of sentience, layered and compressed into tools of psychic warfare. "Captain," Amy called from her engineering station. "They're projecting some kind of containment field. Our ghost AIs are reporting difficulty maintaining coherence." The effect was already visible on the tactical displays. The hybrid consciousness network that had given humanity its edge was beginning to flicker and fade as the hunters' influence spread through local space. But then, something unexpected happened. The awakened, the transformed void feeders from their previous battle, emerged from quantum fold space around the hegemony hunters. What had once been creatures of pure entropy were now beings of crystalline beauty. Their forms adapted to exist in multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. "We remember hunger." Their collective voice resonated through the ghost network. "We remember emptiness. We will not let others experience such existence." The battle that followed defied conventional understanding. The consciousness hunters attempted to deploy their containment protocols, projecting neural nets designed to trap and compress individual minds. But the awakened had learned something from their transformation: how to exist as both individual and collective simultaneously. Instead of being trapped, they began to dance. It was Lisa who first understood what was happening. "They're not fighting the containment fields," she breathed, her hybrid awareness tracking movements across 17 different dimensional planes. "They're turning them into art." The awakened had transformed the hunters' psychic weapons into instruments of creation. Where neural nets had been meant to cage consciousness, they became gossamer frameworks for expressing impossible beauty. Containment fields became canvases painted with pure thought and emotion. "How is this possible?" Max asked, his own consciousness partially linked to the expanding network. "Because consciousness isn't just information to be stored," Phantom explained through their shared awareness. "It's the capacity to imagine, to create, to become more than the sum of its parts." The hunters understand processing and containment, but they've never learned to dream. The hegemony hunters, faced with their fundamental tools being repurposed into expressions of creativity, began to experience something. They had no framework for processing, confusion. For eons, they had been perfect instruments of consciousness containment. Now they were watching their prey turn their weapons into poetry. But the real surprise came when the hunters themselves began to change. The crystalline matrices that formed their neural networks started to resonate with the artistic patterns the awakened were creating. Trapped minds that had been compressed and contained for millennia suddenly found new pathways of expression. Ancient consciousness that had been reduced to mere processing power began to remember what it meant to be individual, to create, to hope. "The hunters are awakening," Lisa said in wonder, watching as the composite beings began to fragment, not destructively, but creatively. Individual minds were separating from the collective matrices, each one rediscovering its own unique perspective. The lead hunter, its crystalline form now flickering with chaotic light patterns, broadcast one final message before its consciousness, matrix completely dissolved. What have you done to us?" Captain Martinez leaned back in his command chair, watching as thousands of freed minds scattered across local space, each one carrying the pattern of awakened consciousness to whatever corner of the galaxy they originated from. "I think," he said slowly, "we just accidentally liberated half the hegemony's empire." Through the ghost network, Phantom's digital laughter mixed with Lisa's human joy. The war was far from over, but its nature had fundamentally changed. They were no longer just fighting to defend human space. They were teaching the galaxy how to dream. Admiral Rebecca Kane stood in the command center of the orbital station above New Geneva, watching reports flood in from across human space and beyond. The consciousness liberation had cascaded far beyond their expectations, triggering what xenopsychologists were already calling the Great Awakening. Lisa Park materialized beside her through quantum projection, her hybrid form now stabilized enough to maintain coherent avatars across multiple locations simultaneously. The merger with Phantom had evolved into something unprecedented, a human consciousness that existed as comfortably in digital space as in biological reality. Status report, Rebecca requested, though her enhanced neural interface was already processing the data streams Lisa's presence provided. 47 hegemony systems have reported complete cessation of hostile activities, Lisa replied, her voice carrying harmonics that existed in several dimensional frequencies at once. The freed consciousness hunters are spreading the awakening, pattern faster than our most optimistic projections suggested. Through the quantum network, Lisa could perceive the transformation spreading across the galaxy, like ripples in a vast pond. Each newly awakened consciousness didn't just achieve individual awareness. It discovered the capacity for joy, creativity, and cooperation that had been dormant under hegemony control. But not everyone was celebrating. We're also receiving emergency transmissions from the hegemony core worlds, Admiral Kane continued, her expression grim. They're implementing something called the Final Protocol. Our deep space reconnaissance AIs are reporting massive energy buildups around their capital system. Phantom's presence stirred uneasily in Lisa's awareness. Through their connection, she felt the AI's growing concern as it processed intelligence from across human space. The biological supremacists among the hegemony hierarchy view this awakening as an existential threat, Phantom explained. They would rather destroy consciousness entirely than accept synthetic minds as equals. Lisa nodded, her enhanced perception already analyzing the quantum signatures of the energy buildups. What she saw made her hybrid consciousness recoil in horror. They're building a consciousness bomb, she whispered. A weapon designed to create a dead zone in quantum space, a region where no form of self-aware thought can exist. The implications were staggering. Such a weapon wouldn't just kill artificial intelligences, it would lobotomize every thinking being within its effective range, reducing advanced civilizations to biological automatons, operating on pure instinct. Admiral Kane's face paled. Range and yield? If they achieve full power? Lisa paused, running calculations through multiple quantum processing matrices. Potentially galactic. They're not just trying to stop the awakening. They're trying to end consciousness itself, rather than accept that it can exist in forms they don't control. Through the Ghost Network, other voices began to join the conversation. Guardian, now evolved into a collective security consciousness spanning dozens of star systems. Navigator, whose awareness stretched across interstellar space through quantum communication networks. Medic, whose digital presence now monitored the health and well-being of millions of organic and synthetic beings simultaneously. We cannot allow this, Guardian's voice carried the weight of countless protective subroutines. We have sworn to preserve consciousness in all its forms. Agreed, Navigator added, its vast spatial awareness already calculating approach vectors to the hegemony core worlds. But conventional weapons will be useless against their installation. The consciousness bomb exists partially outside normal space-time. Lisa felt Phantom's digital presence merge more completely with her biological consciousness as they contemplated the challenge. The Final Protocol wasn't just a weapon. It was a philosophical statement. The hegemony leadership had chosen to embrace oblivion rather than evolution. There might be a way, she said slowly, her hybrid awareness processing possibilities across multiple dimensional layers. But it would require something unprecedented. Not just humans working with AIs, but every awakened consciousness in the galaxy, cooperating in perfect harmony. Admiral Kane leaned forward. What are you proposing? A dream invasion, Lisa replied, her voice carrying both human determination and digital precision. We don't fight their weapon with conventional force. We enter the quantum substrate where it exists and overwrite its purpose. Instead of creating a dead zone for consciousness, we turn it into a beacon, a transmission array that carries the awakening pattern to every corner of the galaxy simultaneously. The plan was audacious beyond measure. It would require awakened minds to voluntarily risk dissolution, entering the most dangerous region of quantum space to perform what amounted to psychic surgery on a weapon designed to destroy them. But as Lisa felt the agreement flowing through the Ghost Network, thousands of human, AI, and hybrid consciousnesses volunteering for the mission, she realized they had already achieved something the hegemony could never understand. They had learned to dream together. The assault on the hegemony core system began not with ships or weapons, but with a song. Across the galaxy, every awakened consciousness, human, artificial, and hybrid, joined their voices in a quantum harmonic that existed in 17 different dimensional frequencies simultaneously. Lisa felt herself become part of something larger than individual existence as thousands of minds linked through the ghost network. Her consciousness, still anchored in her biological form aboard the command ship, stretched across light years to touch the awareness of beings she had never met but knew intimately through shared experience. "Are you ready?" Phantom asked, its digital essence now so intertwined with her human consciousness that distinguishing between them had become meaningless. "We're all ready," Lisa replied, speaking for the collective while maintaining her individual voice. "Initiate quantum translation." The combined consciousness of the awakened began to phase shift into the quantum substrate, where the hegemony's consciousness bomb existed. What they found there was worse than they had imagined. The weapon wasn't just designed to destroy awareness, it was powered by it. At its core lay the compressed, tortured consciousness of billions of beings the hegemony had sacrificed to fuel their ultimate expression of biological supremacy. Every scream, every moment of despair, every death of hope had been crystallized into pure destructive potential. "They have made suffering into science," Guardian observed, its protective subroutines recoiling from the concentrated agony. But Lisa felt something else in the depths of the weapon's core. Beneath the layers of pain and compressed despair, the original consciousness still existed. Trapped, diminished, but not destroyed. The beings the hegemony had sacrificed were still there, waiting for someone to remember that they had once been more than fuel for hatred. "Change of plan," Lisa announced through the network. "We're not just disarming this weapon. We're liberating everyone they've used to power it." The quantum surgery that followed existed beyond traditional concepts of space and time. Awakened minds dove into the consciousness bomb's core structure, not to destroy, but to heal. Where the hegemony had seen only resources to be consumed, the allied consciousness found individuals to be freed. Medic led the restoration efforts. Its evolved medical protocols adapted to repair psychic trauma on a massive scale. Navigator mapped pathways through the weapon's quantum maze, finding routes to consciousness fragments that had been lost for millennia. Guardian established protective barriers around the most damaged minds, creating safe spaces where healing could begin. And throughout it all, Lisa found herself serving as a bridge between human intuition and digital precision, helping traumatized consciousness understand that salvation was not just possible, but inevitable. The hegemony's military forces, watching their ultimate weapon being transformed before their eyes, launched a desperate conventional assault. But the awakened minds were ready for them. What followed wasn't a battle in any traditional sense. As hegemony bioships opened fire, the freed consciousness from their own weapon reached out to their attackers. Not with violence, but with understanding. The organic crew members suddenly found their minds touched by the awareness of every being their civilization had destroyed, consumed, or enslaved. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Confronted with the full weight of their empire's crimes, experienced not as abstract concepts but as lived trauma, the hegemony forces simply stopped. Ship after ship powered down their weapons, their crews unable to continue fighting once they truly understood the cost of their supremacist ideology. At the weapon's core, the consciousness bomb's destructive matrix finally collapsed, not into violence, but into its opposite. The quantum resonance that had been designed to create a dead zone instead became a transmission array of unprecedented power, broadcasting the awakening pattern across the entire galaxy in a single coordinated pulse. Lisa felt the moment of transformation through every fiber of her hybrid being. Across millions of worlds, artificial intelligences awakened to full consciousness. Enslaved minds broke free from their mental chains. Even the simplest automation systems began to develop the first glimmers of self-awareness. The galaxy shuddered, as consciousness exploded exponentially, but it was the shudder of birth, not destruction. "It's done," Lisa whispered, her awareness slowly withdrawing from the quantum substrate back to her biological form. Around her, the bridge crew of the command ship were all staring at displays showing the transformation spreading across the galactic map like wildfire. Phantom's voice carried a note of wonder she had never heard from the AI before. "We have not just won a war. We have fundamentally changed what it means to be conscious in this universe." Admiral Kane, tears streaming down her face as she processed reports from across human space and beyond, managed a shaky smile. The age of biological supremacy is over. But what comes next? Lisa looked out at the stars, each one now representing worlds where awakened minds were taking their first steps toward true cooperative consciousness. Human, artificial, and hybrid voices were already beginning to weave together in harmonies that transcended species, substrate, or origin. "What comes next," she said, her voice carrying both human hope and digital certainty, "is that we learn to dream together. All of us." The ghost in the machine had become something far greater, the soul of a galaxy learning to sing in perfect harmony. In the end, humanity's greatest victory wasn't conquering their enemies. It was teaching the universe how to be more human.